Hi there. I have another message for you today, although I'm going to be honest, I don't really know where this is going. Bear with me. So I asked the angels and guides what kind of video to do today, and I heard them say something funny about yourself or something you're hiding. And I was like, ooh, something I'm hiding. Well, I know I'm being challenged to be vulnerable, so I'll do that option. And so what came to mind was something I don't share that often is the fact that I used to drink a lot of alcohol. I wasn't an alcoholic, but I would say that I abused alcohol. I drank way more than I should have and more than my body could really handle. And maybe if you were listening to this, maybe this is something that's going to resonate with you somehow, but it really became a habit. It just became a bad habit. I started drinking, sadly, because I thought, well, I shouldn't say this. I started drinking wine because I thought, well, I wanted to feel like I'm a classy lady. I want to be able to go out to dinner and have a glass of wine. And so I started with this like 2-buck truck. And it was awful. But I forced myself to like it because I wanted that lifestyle. Definitely not the reason to start drinking. But that was where I was at the time. And I started drinking wine, and I had been drinking other alcohol too, but wine was what really kind of sucked me in. And it became a habit. And it got to the point over the course of probably 10 years or so, where I started drinking pretty much every day, probably 5 to 6 days a week. And sometimes it was a glass of wine. Sometimes it was a bottle of wine. Sometimes it was other alcohol, in addition to wine or in lieu of. And my body was giving me signals that maybe this isn't right for you right now. I started getting to the point where I would get drunk really easy. And I can have one sip of alcohol, whatever it was, and feel like I'm drunk to the point that I couldn't drive. So I would have to call an Uber, which was super inconvenient because then I had to go back at some point and get my car. And I actually even got to the point where I felt like when I drank wine specifically, I felt like my brain in my left front area here, I felt like it was Spanishy, kind of like almost, I don't know, I can't describe it, but I felt the effects of the alcohol on my brain. I've never heard anyone talk about that before, but I physically felt the effects of it on my brain. And that's when I really started taking a step back and thinking, why am I drinking anymore? Like, what is this doing for me? And when I first started, it was fun. And, I've historically been quiet and shy. And it lifted me up, like, oh yeah, let's have some fun. But it was just making me tired, and I got drunk easily. It was really becoming an inconvenience. And this is over the course of several months, I really started questioning it. And I remember even at one point, my deceased grandfather, my grandpa, came to me when I was sleeping into my dream. And I just remember him. It was a visitation. It wasn't just a dream. He was there. It was a visitation. And he came and he just looked at me and shook his head like he was so disappointed in me. And I knew it was because I was drinking. I think that night I had a lot of alcohol to drink. And over over the course of several years, I drank a lot, and eventually I got to the point where I would come home from work and I had a routine. I would take off my clothes and change into my pajamas and wash my face. And then I would grab a glass of wine and dessert normally, or something to snack on, which was sweet. And I was a sugaraholic too. And I would plop down on the couch and watch crime shows. But one week, I remember just kept thinking, why am I drinking? And it was a Friday afternoon. It was a Friday after Christmas in 2018. And my mom had died a few months before. And I was grieving the loss of my mom. And that triggered more alcohol. And I drank a bottle of wine for 3 nights that week. It was the third night that I had drank an entire bottle of wine. And I had drank every night that week too. And I knew I had to stop. I knew it. It was time. And so I went to bed that Friday night and drunk. And I woke up the next morning and God took that desire away from me. I've never had a drink since. Done. I have no desire for it. I don't miss it. No, I miss the atmosphere sometimes. I love wine tasting at wineries. That's really fun. But I don't miss the alcohol. And so I think my point here is, if you're feeling similar, where maybe you are questioning why you're drinking, or whatever bad habit is, then maybe it's time to just really reflect on that and give it some thought and wonder, what is it really doing for you? Maybe it was fun or it served a purpose at one point, but maybe it's not now. And that's okay. We change, and I know there's so many people that drink, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but for some people like me, it was just too much, and my poor little body couldn't take it anymore, and it was time to stop. And if that's you, I support you, and I pray for you. I hope that you have the strength, not hope, I know you have the strength, but I hope that you can tap into that strength to stop or cut back or whatever it is you're feeling called to do. I hope that was helpful. Until next time, many blessings.